Hey folks, how are we all doing today? I am here with my November book wrap up. I believe I read about a total of 15 books and I have around 5 physical books to show you. There was a lot of blended reading, a lot of audiobooks as usual. I'm definitely in my audiobook girly era and I am loving that, for me, to be quite frank with you. I thought I'd quickly go and blast through like statistics. So in terms of star ratings, I had 3 5 stars, 5 4 stars, 1 3.5 stars, 2 3 stars, 1 2.5 stars, 1 1 star and 2 DNFs. So let's get on started with the first book that I finished in November. Okay, so the first book is one that I've actually done a dedicated review for. I discussed the book and also the movie, so I won't be talking too much about it in this one. This is the standalone ode to 80s horror, My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix, and I gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars. So just a quick synopsis. We've got 2 best friends, Abby and Gretchen, who have grown up together. One night they have a sleepover and they find themselves in this wood. There's this haunted story about this abandoned like shack in the woods, and they kind of dare each other to go in there. But they get split up and Gretchen becomes possessed by a dark entity within that shack. So it's obviously about the best friend's exorcism. A lot of nods to 80s culture, music, fashion, the words, you know, but yeah, I do talk a lot more about this in that review, which I will link in the description if you're interested in watching, or in the cards. Okay, so the next 4 books I don't have physically. They consist of 1 digital book and 3 audio books, all from my library. The first one being my 1 star for the month, and that is Lord of the Fly Fest by Goldie Moldavsky. So imagine Lord of the Flies, which I actually read a month prior, and the reason I read the Lord of the Flies is because I had this book that seemed intriguing at the time but I wanted to try, but I thought it would be better to have the benefit of knowing the original story first. So that was the thought process there. So obviously imagine a Lord of the Flies sort of situation. We're on a deserted island, but in this sort of inspiration, we are following a group of social media influencers who have all come to this island. They've paid like $2 grand each or something to be there, in the hopes of meeting this really affluent social media presence, like one of the most popular it girls at this festival. The festival does not exist and it quickly becomes like Lord of the Flies, right? So that's the kind of premise that we've got going in. Unfortunately for me, this just lacked any substance overall, and I just didn't care about anything that was going on. I didn't have any connections to the characters. I didn't care about the story. I don't know, I thought it would be a really good opportunity to talk about social media and this craze of doing anything, giving up everything to meet someone who has a lot of followers, you know, that literally like boils down to it. But I just don't think that, even if the discussion was there, it just wasn't done as well as I'd hoped it to be. There wasn't much like discourse on that, so unfortunately that left it with a 1 star. Next up, I finished a book that I had been reading for so long. I actually ended up having to like re-download it after a couple of weeks because I had requested it so many times. It was one of those situations where I just kept putting it down even though I was really enjoying it, because I had like book tours coming up and priority reads, I would call them, to post about, you know, books that were sent my way to talk about online. So I just didn't have time to pick this up as much as I would have liked to, but I'm glad I continued on with it. This is Infested by Angel Louis Colon, and this is a 4 out of 5 stars for me. This is a standalone. Okay, so this one is described as The Taking of Jake Livingston meets Cemetery Boys, and it's about a Puerto Rican teenager who battles with a malevolent spirit targeting his apartment building and the all too real horrors of gentrification. It's the summer before senior year and Manny has just moved from Texas to the Bronx in New York. So instead of hanging with his friends and making some split spending money, Manny is forced to do menial tasks in his new home, a luxury condo his stepdad is managing, while stressing about starting over. He really doesn't have a very good relationship with his stepdad. He feels like his stepdad's kind of too hard on him. He feels like his mum always taking the stepdad's side, and he just really doesn't want to be there. He's uprooted from his life that he knows about at like a crucial moment in his education, in his life, and he's just got a lot of resentment. So thankfully he meets Sasha, who is actually protesting the building but turns out to be really cool, and he strikes up an unlikely friendship with Mr. Mueller, the building's exterminator. Then the nightmares begin and Manny swears he has roaches crawling under his skin. So this is kind of like ghost story, as the title would say, an infestation, so there's lots of bugs, body horror, that sort of thing. But honestly, what really stood out for me were the conversations on gentrification and racism in the community, which added to the fantastical horror, because you had not only the very like present fear of these roaches just generally making things unsanitary, unclean in this building complex that is supposed to be open very, very soon. You've also got his baby sister living there, his mum, his stepdad and himself living there in the hopes of getting it set up really quickly and ready for the masses, right? So you've got that general layer of gross infestation. You've also got the horror of, oh my god, these bugs aren't like normal, why do I feel like they're crawling under my skin? Turns into a horror, right? And then you've got again the very literal horror of gentrification, racism, topics of that nature, and it just all beautifully, obviously not beautifully in a good way, but the way it all worked together was absolutely phenomenal. The body horror description was amazing. There were so many times, even just thinking about it now, where I just felt sick, like I cringed away, like you literally just saw me, I physically recoiled from reading it. Like it had such an adverse reaction within me, like bodily. It felt awful, but in a good way. Like it was doing what it was supposed to be doing for a body horror, you know what I mean? Like it was fantastic. So yeah, that was a 4 out of 5 stars. I'm so glad I continued on. I kept requesting it out from the library, because imagine if I was just like, oh, this is taking too long, bye. But no, this was a great story. Okay, following on from that, I have an audiobook. So I listened to the first book in Great Greek Myths or something like that, by Stephen Fry. This was obviously the first book, Mythos, the Greek Myths Retold, and I gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars. So yeah, as you can imagine, all the Greek myths, it begins with the beginnings of like the Titans and the Olympian uprising, kind of taking over Kronos, all of that, Zeus, the battle between them. Yeah, it was a really staple, great retelling with fantastic storytelling. I felt like Stephen Fry and his voice was just enriched and entertaining and engrossing. I loved as well that there was more background than just like the big players. You had more depth with the scenery around them. You had more of like the smaller characters, the lesser known characters within the great Greek myths. So yeah, I really enjoyed this one. I carried on with the Magisterium series, which is by Holly Black and Cassandra Clare, and I was up to book 4, The Silver Mask. I won't go too much in depth about the synopsis of it all. It's a magical school. We're following a trio of friends. I've been speaking about it for the last like a month or so. I wasn't as engaged with this one, I will say. There were still moments of excitement and intrigue where I was very much hooked, but overall this just didn't do what the others did, and I had that kind of remaining feel by the time you get to the 5th book, which I'll talk about shortly. But I did give this one a 2.5 out of 5 stars, so this was definitely my least favourite of the whole series, unfortunately. Alrighty, so back with my next physical book. This one was actually a carryover from October's YA Book Club 2023, which is created and hosted by Amy McCall, who I absolutely adore. So this is Every Exquisite Thing by Laura Stephen, and oh my god, this was an absolute gothic delight. 5 out of 5 stars. I have a full review already on my channel for this, so if you are interested, go ahead and give that a watch. I talk in much detail about how it connects with inspiration. It's classic inspiration that kind of began the story, I guess, and what it did differently, what was unique, the different character plot points, all of that. It is pretty much all spoiler free, so don't be fearful of that. But this was a fantastic standalone, and yeah, I went on a little bit excitedly in that video, so if you do want to see that, definitely check that out. Alright, so back to the last book of the Magisterium, again Cassandra Clare, Holly Black. The 5th and final book was The Golden Tower, and this one was a little bit better than the 4th book. I gave this one a 3 out of 5 stars, but generally you can see it's like been a decline since the first few books for me personally. So I did think it was a really good conclusion. I thought it wrapped up really well, but I feel like if I was as hooked as I was with the first 3 books, especially the first 2 books, I would have enjoyed this a lot more than I did. I really think though that this book series would make such a cool TV adaptation, whether it's live action or cartoon. I think it would be like perfect, you know what I mean? I just feel like the plot points and everything that kind of developed throughout the story, and the character analysis and things like that, and just being, you know, what a lot of people love, magical schools, that sort of thing, I think it would translate really well to the telly. I don't know, I don't think there's any kind of discussion about that happening, but I would love that personally. So the next 2 books are my DNFs of the month. The Unseelie, Evilise Husman. This one is a series in the Unseelie duology, so obviously this being the first of the 2 books. Let me get you the synopsis, because being a DNF, it's definitely out of my mind now. Twin sisters, both on the run, but different as day and night. One, a professional rogue, searches for a fabled treasure. The other, a changeling, searches for the truth behind her origins, trying to find a place to fit in with the realm of Fae, who made her, and the humans who shun her. Iselia, Seelie, Greygrove looks just like her twin Isolde, but as an autistic changeling trying to navigate her unpredictable magic, Seelie finds it more difficult to fit in with the humans around her. When Seelie and Isolde are caught up in a heist gone wrong and make some unexpected allies, they find themselves unravelling a larger mystery that has its roots in the history of humans and Fae alike. Both sisters soon discover that the secrets of fairies may be more valuable than any pile of gold and jewels, but can Seelie harness her magic in time to protect her sister and herself? So I ended up DNFing this quite far in, actually. I was 75% in. Just didn't really retain a lot of information, and one thing that kind of felt off, like, I really like that they went for autistic representation, right, especially in the main character, because I haven't read a lot of like medium to high fantasy with autistic rep, especially being in the main characters, right? But at the beginning it kind of threw me off, because they basically said, from what I remember, changelings were just autistic children, and I don't know, something about that just felt off. Like, I could see what they were trying to do as a concept, but it just felt, I don't know, insensitive. It just didn't feel worded correctly, like, because all throughout history, right, so many negative stereotypes. You know, you swap the human baby for a Fae child, the Fae child is unruly, is evil, is often ugly, and they're now saying that, hey, they're just autistic. I might be going too deep into it, but that's how it felt, and I was like, hold on a minute. That doesn't feel right, you know? It just feels a bit strange, but I don't know. I just think it wasn't handled as well. I don't know what the author's background is with autism and additional needs or anything like that. So yeah, that kind of uncertainty with how I felt with that, plus just not really getting hooked to the storyline as it is, or really connecting to anything that was happening, just felt best to DNF it, because I felt like I was wasting my time, which sounds so awful. The other one I felt similar to was The Squire by Duncan M. Hamilton, and this is a first in the series of The Blood of Kings. Of course, again, I DNF'd this one, but at 11%. This was just more historical than fantasy than I was hoping for. Like, I thought it was going to be really high fantasy from the start, and it just wasn't what I was really interested in, unfortunately. So I just decided to leave that, and it's got a couple of books in the series too, and I thought, I can't be asked to wait to get to the fantasy stuff if I'm not hooked now. I also kept getting confused about that, different characters as well. It's just, it was very dense. Okay, so the next 2 are physical books, one of them being a comic, and that is I Hate Fairyland, Volume 1, Madly Ever After by Scotty Young. This I picked up a couple of months ago. I think it was when I was in Brighton. This is in a series, number 1, and I gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars. We are following Gert, who as a 6-year-old got transported into the magical fairyland, but the task of obtaining the key to get her back home has taken like nearly 20 years, so she is now a grown woman trapped in a child's body, and she is hating every minute of it. It is violent, it is chaotic, it is full of colour and magic and sweets, and she just does not want to vibe with it. This was so much fun, honestly. The humour definitely built up as the story went along. Like, in the last couple of issues within this like bind up, I was cackling so hard, and I definitely feel like the story itself got better when this character called Happy got involved, because there felt like more of direction to the storyline, like more point to it, you know, and I just enjoyed that. But yeah, I'll definitely be picking up volume 2 at some point. I might see if I can find it on Vinted or something like that. But yeah, this is so much fun. Next up, another book that should be on the channel shortly, I would like to say this month, is Starling House by Alex E. Harrow. I want to thank Black Crow PR for sending this my way. I did do a post about this on Instagram for the book tour, but I also wanted to do a dedicated video because I adored it. All these tabs are just points of references that was just beautiful, heartbreaking, thought-provoking, points to remember for later, things like that. So yeah, I won't talk too much about this. It is a standalone, but yeah, I do want to do a review for this. But we are following kind of just a brief summary. It's kind of like a haunted house, a modern gothic, creatures in there like creatures of the night. It's about found family, about so much. I don't want to talk too much about it here because I want to save my thoughts for later. Okay, back to audiobooks now. I picked up the second book in Stephen Fry's mythology series, and this was Heroes. I gave this one a 3 out of 5 stars, so I want to say that I enjoyed it a little bit less than the first one in the series. It was easy listening again, and again, kind of like it's nice to remind myself of these stories. A lot of them I'm already very familiar with, and I just like the entertaining value of Stephen Fry and how he delivers stories. But in this particular one, some of the voices that he put on was just a bit irritating, like it just felt too silly, you know, and that kind of took me out of it. But it was a nice refresher on the story. Next up, I listened to a book called The Library of Shadows by Rachel Moore, and this is Rachel's debut. I gave this one a 3.5 out of 5 stars. It is a standalone, I do believe. We are at the elite school, Radcliffe Prep. It's the 3rd most haunted school in the country, where student disappearance isn't uncommon and no one dares to stay in the library after dark. And Estee Logano enrolls with the hopes of finding her dead father. Not literally, of course. She doesn't believe in ghosts. Going to her dad's school just seems like her best hope at figuring out who he was as a person. But then Estee meets Mateo, who is probably definitely a real ghost, and an annoying one at that. When Mateo frames Estee for the theft of a rare book from the library's secret spire and then vanishes, Estee will have to track him down or risk being expelled and leaving Radcliffe early, just like her father did. Except following her father's footsteps might be more dangerous than Estee ever anticipated. As she investigates the library with its secret passageways, hidden tunnels and haunted halls, she learns that the student disappearances aren't just myth, and if she isn't careful, she will be next. This one was actually like an interesting twist, because I was on the cusp of DNFing this for so long, but when we finally got to like the paranormal developments, it then got really interesting. That's when I get the most invested within the story. I really enjoyed how deep the ghost story part of it and how integral it was to the kind of development of the plot, and I loved the dark academia aspect of it. It definitely was more vibes than substance in that regard, but it was a vibe I was on board with, you know. The storytelling was strong and the atmosphere was perfect. So yeah, that was a good story, and I would definitely keep a lookout for the other book that this author is bringing out. The second to last book is Horror Hotel by Victoria Fulton and Faith McLaren. And I tell you, I didn't actually realise this was written by 2 people. And for the longest time, and I know I read like the Magisterium series, which was written by 2 authors. For the longest time, I was avoiding reading books by dual authors, because I had such a bad taste after reading Beautiful Darkness, and I thought, right, it's just because it's 2 authors. This when I was young, right? I was probably like 13 or something, I don't know. And I was like, right, I'm going to avoid dual authors from now on. And I think I've definitely read books since with dual authors and just not realised, right? But this, I don't know, this just made me chuckle, because I was like, hold on a minute, this is dual authors. What happened to my vow? It was so silly. Like, honestly, it's not even that deep. It reminded me, and then it made me chuckle. Anyway, you guys don't care about that. Horror Hotel, written by 2 authors. This is a 4 out of 5 stars for me, and it is a part of a series, but I don't believe the sequel is out yet. This is a YA horror about a group of teen ghost hunters who spend the night in a haunted LA hotel. Apparently it's the Blair Witch Project for the TikTok generation. When YouTube famous ghost gang Chrissy, Chase, Emma and Kiki visit a haunted LA hotel notorious for tragedy to secretly film after dark, they expect it to be just like their previous paranormal hauntings, spooky enough to attract subscribers and ultimately harmless. But when they stumble upon something unexpected in the former room of a gruesome serial killer, they quickly realise that they're in over their heads. Sometimes it's the dead who needs our help and the living we should fear. This story was so good. It actually reminded me of the TV show Archive 81, which I really loved, and apparently the ratings were really good for it. Like, the data is really good, but it still got cancelled on Netflix for whatever reason. I don't know, don't ask me. I'm still kind of like crossed about that. It also reminded me of that actual hotel. American Horror Story did a season about it, Hotel, and that kind of reminded me of it too. I really loved Kiki. She was definitely my favourite. I feel like she was me, right? I felt like she was me in this book. She had colourful bright hair, bubbly. I loved her. She was so cute. Definitely one of my favourite characters. I did have to re-listen a few times though, because I found myself getting confused with who was who. Like, for example, Chrissy and Emma, for some reason I thought they were the same person for a long time. And also there was like a chapter just called E, and I thought, oh, E, Emma. No, it wasn't Emma, but it was because the chapters felt so short, which usually I love, but because we had a perspective from everyone and then from characters from the past that they were investigating, it just felt like too many to keep track of. So they started to blend a little bit, and that's when things started getting a little bit blurred and confused. So I did have to stop, rewind, be kind, and re-listen a little bit to kind of get my bearings back. But I mean, other than that, it was a stellar story. I really enjoyed it. Okay, and lastly, I have a blended reading. I did the physical and the audiobook for this, and I've also done more of a full review kind of straight after reading it over on my TikTok, if you're interested, of Grown by Tiffany D. Jackson. 5 out of 5 stars. This was phenomenal. Like, even thinking about it now, oh my god, tears spring to my eyes. Like, this was so emotional, but it was a necessary read for sure. So I will quickly give you a bit of a synopsis and then just direct you to the video that I've already done rather than repeating myself. Corey Fields is dead. When Enchanted Jones wakes with blood on her hands and zero memory of the previous night, no one, the police and Corey's fans included, has more questions than she does. All she really knows is that this isn't how things are supposed to be. Corey was Enchanted's ticket to stardom. Before there was a dead body, Enchanted was an aspiring singer, struggling with her tight-knit family's recent move to the suburbs, while trying to find her place as one of the few black girls in high school. But then, legendary R&B artist Corey Fields spots her at an audition, and suddenly her dream of being a professional singer takes flight. Enchanted is dazzled by Corey's luxurious life, but soon her dream turns into a nightmare. Behind Corey's charm and star power lurks a dark side, one that wants to control her every move with rage and consequences. Except now he's dead and the police are at the door. Who killed Corey Fields? All signs point to Enchanted. It was, oh my god, thriller. Like, it felt like true crime that I was reading, right? Part thriller, part adolescence, like girlhood, part growing up, part media and the music industry being really messed up, you know. It was just absolutely phenomenal, and as I say, I've got a review all about it on TikTok. So that concludes my wrap up for November. I had so many great reads, but I also had some reads that I was just happy to let go and be like, okay, it's not for me, let's move on to the next one. So I'm so happy I'm at that stage where I can do that now, because for ages I had to kind of push through and not leave a book unfinished, but now I realise that I value my own time, you know. And that's not to say that it's not going to be a 5 stars, 10 out of 10 stars for someone else. It's just not for me. So that is it for this video. Thank you ever so much for watching. I appreciate it. I appreciate you, and I shall speak to you in another video soon. Bye.